What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to a Canada Coaster Fan video. What? Yeah, I haven't had one of those in a couple of years, but recently I got to go to Japan. This was something I wanted to do for most of the time having the channel, actually, and I had plans to do it in 2020. However, of course, with the pandemic, that fell through, but my family was going to Japan, and I tagged along, and I got to visit some amusement parks, and I had a great time, so I'm going to be talking about some of them and some of the roller coasters. I see this is the new present mode I'm trying out on PowerPoint, so we'll see how this works. I can see myself kind of stuttering around in the bottom right corner. But, anyways, yes, I'm excited to talk about some of Japan's best roller coasters and amusement parks. Now, in terms of parks, I went to four different parks. I went to Fuji-Q, Nagashima, and the two Disney parks. And that probably leads to some questions, such as what about the other parks? And yes, I think that's definitely a valid question to be asking. So, in terms of the other parks, a big reason why I didn't hit a lot of them up was a lot of the rides were closed. So, in terms of Kawasemi at Tobo Zoo, I really wanted to ride that. It is getting a repaint, which is unfortunate. I mean, I guess fortunate that it'll look better, but unfortunate in that it had the park closed or the ride closed, and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get some time to go to that park anyways. And also, we have to look at Flying Dinosaur, which similar boat. It was closed for maintenance back in May, which is when I went. It is May right now, the time I'm recording, so back in May. But it had just closed for maintenance, and I didn't do Universal that time. Next time, though, which I plan on there being a next time because I love my trip, I will definitely try to check out Universal for sure. And lastly, Thunder Dolphin at the Tokyo Dome City. I was really excited to ride this. You can see this is actually a rare photo taken by me. I did not take a lot of photos of the coasters this trip, but I took this one. I actually took a ton of photos of Thunder Dolphin. In fact, I have more photos of Thunder Dolphin than like all the other rides combined, even though it didn't run, and that was because we were staying right near the Tokyo Dome. And I spent a lot of time at Tokyo Dome City. They had some great food there, some great desserts there, some bowling, and I saw two baseball games there. But the unfortunate thing was that there was an incident, a safety incident on one of their smaller rides that resulted in a really unfortunate death. And of course, the most important thing I think is that they're able to make sure the park can operate safely. You know, safety is very important, and obviously making sure that there wouldn't be another incident like that because it's obviously really tragic and horrible that something like that happens. So, of course, you miss out on the coaster, but you also understand that there's real world implications and that you hope that they get it right for next time. All right, so let's start off with Nagashima Spotland. This was the first park I visited. We took the bus there, almost got on the wrong bus, which is kind of funny. But yeah, took the bus there from Nagoya, which is a place I always wanted to see. And I really love Nagashima Spotland. And this is an image from Wikimedia Commons because I got like basically no photos when I was there. It was one of those days where I knew that they didn't allow any sort of loose articles on, even with zipped up pockets. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to bother worrying about that. I'm just going to bother worrying about getting on these rides and enjoying myself. So I kept my phone in the bag most of the day, so I didn't get a lot of photos. But enough said about that. This park was awesome. I really like this park. I really lucked out. Some people have been to this park when it's been really busy or the weather hasn't been great, and it's kind of dampened the experience. But for me, this was actually one of the better crowd days of any park ever, and also one of the better weather days. So I got to enjoy these coasters, and let's talk about some of the major ones. All right, so let's start off with Acrobat. This was the B&M flying coaster there, and I was really excited to try this coaster because I haven't been on a B&M coaster in quite some time. You know, it'd been like 4 years since I'd last been on a B&M, or in 4 years since I'd last been on a B&M flyer. And this ride was really good. It looks really pretty. This is another image from Wikimedia Commons. Yeah, this ride looks really pretty. Great color scheme. And it really goes through a really solid layout. It's a clone of Manta, and I liked Manta. The pretzel loop is really good. Again, I think there's more standout attractions at this park, which kind of makes me forget about Acrobat a little bit, but it was still a good ride. I'm going to give it like a 7 out of 10. You know, it's enjoyable, has some good forces, probably deserves better, but there was nothing too stand out about it, though I was happy to be getting on a B&M flying coaster. Unfortunately, not the one that people come to Japan for, but it's still a cool ride, and it's a great addition to this park, which has a really cool coaster lineup. All right, so next up we have Ultra Twister, and I'm mostly just going to go through the ones that I think people really would want me to talk about. And this was a really strange ride. It was one I was excited for. We've all seen those Ultra Twister POVs. They're some of the most viewed POVs out there. I think it was on all of our bucket lists, and yeah, it was interesting. Straights are a little tight. Wasn't super comfortable in there. Lift hills, kind of funky. Vertical lift hill, get that kind of feeling that you're gonna fall out. The vertical drop at first is really cool. Great first drop. But one of my highlights, honestly, maybe my highlight, you go over that janky kind of hill, and then you go into the twister section, which, yeah, I mean, that section there is definitely what people go onto the ride for. I actually think I like the drop a little better. I'm a kind of a sucker for those steep drops that give you butterflies in your stomach. And then you hit like the hardest brake run of all time. Then you go backwards, you go through the inversions again, and another really hard brake run. Like this ride's like a 6 out of 10. I didn't feel the need to ride again, but there's certainly not too much wrong with it apart from it, looking kind of ugly, being kind of a weird and disjointed experience, and hitting the brake run really hard. All right, Arashi. Now, this is an image I took from the park. I wish I got a better image of Arashi. I wish I got any photos of Arashi. I loved this ride. I really did. And I'm not sure, this ride's got a reputation of being better than the other free spins. And I'm not sure if that's 100% true. I think this ride is really great as it is, and I'm not sure if it gave a better experience than the other free spins. But to be honest with you, all the free spins are really good. I think there's definitely a certain bias against these rides because they're common. I think clones, there's a bias against them, and I actually do get it. If your home park has one of these clones and you ride it all the time, and then you're going to another park, especially one overseas, and you want to complete the park in terms of credits, and you have to wait in line for a ride that you've ridden like 30 times. I mean, this one is supposed to be better, and maybe if I rode them all, I would notice that. I can see why people would be frustrated, but for me, I don't get to ride these often, and every time I do, I'm like, yeah, this was a seriously awesome ride. It was seriously smooth. The flipping was really cool. These are cool attractions, and I think they're great fits for parks. I think they're kind of the best combination of a flat ride and a roller coaster. Oh yeah, and then in terms of a score, I would give Arashi an 8.5 out of 10. Okay, Steel Dragon 2000 time. This is a picture of me on Steel Dragon 2000. You can see in the front row. And the magical thing about this was this is a park that assigns rows, and this was my first ride of any coaster on the trip, and I was lucky enough to get the front row, which was just, oh man, it was magical. And this ride was really, really good. I'm super happy that I like Steel Dragon 2000. In fact, I love Steel Dragon 2000, which was not something I really expected because, the Morgan Hypers are great rides, but they're somewhat whatever for me. They're not very memorable. I don't really remember them. Sometimes I forget that I haven't even been on Mamba, because it feels like I've been on Mamba, for example. But Steel Dragon 2000, this ride was just, oh, it was so good. And maybe it's because it was the first ride of the trip. There's a certain bias with that. But after riding everything else at the park and getting another ride in the middle seats, I still really enjoyed myself. The lift hill's awesome. You get a great view of a really pretty park and all the water around you. The first drop is kind of take it or leave it. It's probably the weakest first drop of any of the Gigas. But then I felt myself almost graying out a little bit at the bottom of the first drop. I felt the forces there, which was something that's crazy because I don't gray out often on rides, but I think it's partially can be attributed to the fact that I didn't eat a lot or drink a lot that day up until getting lunch later that day. So yeah, I felt the forces there. That first hill is really good floater, and the helices are good too. They're good turnarounds. I always liked them on Magnum, and this kind of reminded me of it. Not the highlight. We get into the highlight at the end, and that's the bunny hills of floater airtime. I thought that was really awesome. I'm not a big floater airtime person, but this ride really hit all the spots in terms of floater airtime and made me think, okay, this is why people like floater airtime so much. Steel Dragon 2000 gives you that in spades. It's got a really good floater airtime, especially at the end, going through those tunnels and with the clamshells, which I think were a good fit. I know people say that hinders the ride, and I don't know if I agree. I mean, maybe if you had a restraint with more space or something, it might be a little better. They pushed it down pretty hard on me, but it's a comfortable restraint when you do get stapled like that, and it allowed for some good floater airtime. It's kind of the restraint that I think of when I think of floater airtime. So yeah, Steel Dragon 2000 was awesome, like 9.5 out of 10. In terms of my current coaster rankings, I was actually originally planning to do a top 30, but I think that there's not enough movement in the top 30 to justify that. But I want to let people know that right now this coaster sits around 30-ish, like right ahead of Leviathan. I think it would just barely make the list if I made a top 30. But I'm surprised at that because I would have guessed it would have been like 80 or 90 or something just based on the reputation that this ride has. I had a lot more fun on it than Almost most of the Gigas, because I found myself slightly disappointed by each of them in various ways. They didn't quite live up to the best coaster in the world label that all of them had, at least at one point, besides, of course, like Red Force. But this one, I went in not expecting too much, and, it ended up delivering. All right, so I'm going to skip over Hakugei till the end because I know people are really, really itching to hear my thoughts on that. But Fuji-Q Highland, yes, this park was awesome. I took this picture from the window of our hotel. We stayed at the on-site hotel, which was, not the cheapest hotel, but I will tell you, it is one of the coolest hotels I've ever stayed at. The view out the room was just absolutely extraordinary. We actually got to see Fuji fully, and that was just an incredible moment. The elevator ride up, you get to see Mount Fuji as you climb up because it's got a clear glass casing on the outside, so you get to see Fuji from there. And they actually do little tours to the very top deck of it where you can get a really good view of Fuji. And then on the backside, you get a really good view of some of the best coasters in the world. So how about that? But yeah, Fuji-Q Highland is in my top 5 favorite parks ever. I enjoyed myself so much. It's got a reputation for things not working out there, but everything worked out for me. I was worried that the facial recognition that they implement was not going to work, so I took my official photo for the day with my glasses on, and then I took them off, and then I was in line. I was like, oh shoot, are they gonna block me or something from getting on because it won't recognize me? But it did. The food was really good. The workers were really good. Fuji-Q Highland is perfect, in my opinion. I mean, the operations, I think, are pretty good. It's just, there's a lot more rules with security. Restraints there's more seat belts. They have the metal detectors, But as far as a park that's, handicapped by all these things, which I think are necessary in Japanese society safety-wise, I mean, they do a really good job. I had no flaws at this park. I had a great time at this park. Let's talk about its coasters. Takabisha is a photo I took. This is one of the few times where clouds were actually covering Mount Fuji. But yeah, Takabisha was a ride that I think a lot of us have always wanted to ride. Now, a bunch of you have probably ridden the one at the mall, American Dream Meadowland Mall. I always want to just call it Mall of America too. That's certainly what it feels like. But I think that there's a lot of things that might make Takabisha better, just kind of the setting, obviously, being the biggest one. I mean, that is one of the coolest settings ever. And having that section in the dark at the beginning, which I kind of forgot about. So I was pleasantly surprised that section was such a good section. But yeah, this was a really good coaster. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the launch. The launch was pretty forceful. The inversions were pretty cool. And then, of course, the best part is that drop. You go up that vertical lift hill, you get that kind of, it says 121 degrees, which is cool. And then you go on that drop. It's got the holding brake. And yeah, that is one of the better Beyond Vertical drops, in my opinion. It's smooth. It doesn't hurt or anything like that going over it. Maverick's an awesome drop, but my dad was talking to me about it after we rode Takabisha. He said, Maverick, it really kind of throws you over. This one and kind of eases you over, and then you really feel the steepness as you go down. But yeah, this is a really cool ride. Again, the drop is the highlight. The inversions are pretty cool. The launch is awesome. I love the stuff that happens in the dark. 8.5 out of 10. Really good ride. Pretty straightforward, but really good. And it's unfortunate that Dodonpa's not there. I don't know what made that come to mind, but yeah, that would have been really cool to experience. All right, next up is Zocon. This is a coaster that I didn't know much about actually going in. I'd remembered it, and I was like, oh yeah, they have that there. But like even probably the day before, I kind of forgot this was a thing. And boy, oh boy, that really led to me being pleasantly surprised. I think that's what everyone says when they go to this park. It's like, oh, Zocon was such a pleasant surprise. But I was not ready for this to be such an awesome layout. I love this layout. This is one of my favorite of its kind. This is an Intamin coaster, and I just couldn't get enough. The music was awesome. The theming was pretty cool. It kind of felt like it was out of one of those European parks, which was cool. But yeah, this ride just has a really cool layout, lots of surprises. If you don't know much about this ride, I suggest not educating yourself until you go, because you can be surprised like me with all the cool things that make up this layout. Yeah, I really loved Zocon. Some great moments, some moments of airtime, which was kind of cool. And I actually think I would give this the same score as Takabisha, 8.5, but I actually think I like this coaster more than Takabisha, just because, yeah, the Zocon was awesome. It surprised me, and I have a hard time viewing it as just like a family coaster. I think of it almost on par with some of the better thrill coasters I've been on. And I'm not someone who usually loves the family style coasters. I'm someone who, I want to feel like I'm going to die or something on a coaster. Not really. But, I love that insane intensity. And so family coasters, even kind of the better layout ones, if it's not something I grew up with and I have that nostalgia, I'm never really all on board. But Zocon was a ride that, I don't really view as a family coaster because it had some serious thrills and was seriously fun and is a great addition to this lineup. Okay, Fujiyama. Yes, I did just zoom in on the photo from the hotel room. Again, I didn't take a lot of pictures. I took more here, but not a lot of pictures. Fujiyama was a really, really anticipated coaster for me because it had a lot of helium in rankings. A lot of people I know personally have called this one of the best roller coasters in the world. I have a friend who has this as his number three overall. And then if you guys remember Brad from the TSAC days, he has it like, I think around his top 20. I'm not sure if it's still in there. So those were people who were giving it much higher ratings than what I had heard online, and I'd heard a lot about, the finale being one of the best out there. So this was the first coaster that I rode at Fuji Highland. Got there right in the morning. It was also the first coaster I rode the second day that I went. And by the way, that early access is very valuable from the hotel because they run this coaster a little earlier in the day, and I think that that's something that allows you to skip a lot of lines, because this coaster gets serious lines, and it's really worth it because this is an awesome coaster. This is a historic coaster. They call it the most intense coaster in the world. They also say that about Eejanaika in the queue, and they also call it the king of coasters, and I can see why. I mean, this is an awesome ride. I'm just gonna say that right now. Is it as good as the other people think? Well, we'll have to talk about the layout first. But you go up that lift hill, you get an amazing view, one of the best views ever. You go down that drop, good drop. You hit that turnaround, another drop, and you hit that little floatery airtime hill. Again, a good first half, but it's really kind of near the end, the second half where this ride gets going. You have that low to the ground turn, and you have those weird kind of laterally bunny hop things. I don't even know how to explain them. You've seen it on the POV, and those are crazy. Those are nuts. Those are insane. And, I've heard some people have gotten a lot of room on this ride and experienced that, and I can only imagine. I mean, they combine laterals with ejector air. It's one of the coolest experiences you can have. Now, I actually do think I like Steel Dragon 2000 more, which is kind of weird and kind of inconsistent with my coaster values because I've consistently liked the crazier layouts and rides like Magnum more than the Giga coasters that are more about being smooth and fast and fun. But maybe it was just those rides on Steel Dragon just being so incredible in that sensation of speed. But they're also in the same tier. I would put Fujiyama, I'd give it like a 9.5, and I would put it in the mid 30s for me. So I think that's kind of near some of the RMCs like Untamed and Goliath, the Great America, Iron Rattlers, somewhere in there. I'm considering moving that up on my personal rankings just because of how much that ride kind of means to me on a personal level. But this is an awesome coaster, and I'm glad I got to ride it twice. I only got to ride it twice, but I'm glad those were two crazy good rides. Okay, so we're going to move past Eejanaika and save it till the end. I went to Tokyo Disneyland, and I'll talk about this very briefly. Got to ride Splash Mountain again. It's been a while, old friend, and it's not something you get to experience every day. I did Big Thunder Mountain, which was kind of whatever. And honestly, my highlight of the day was Pooh's Honey Hunt. The crowds were crazy, but I was able to do that ride, and that was a ride. It's not a coaster that I'd heard a lot of great things about, but didn't know too much about. And I have to say, I really, really enjoyed that. I was with my family, and they're longtime Disney veterans, and I told them, trust me, this is not what you're expecting from a Winnie the Pooh ride. And it was awesome. My friend texted me and said Pooh's Honey Hunt is absolute cinema. And, I can't help but agree. It's really unfortunate that Space Mountain was closed because that's, a ride that I want to experience. But they're, fully reimagining it. It's super expensive. You can see the construction. Without Space Mountain, I think that really helps the park tick. It did feel kind of small. But it's still a really good time, and I really am happy that I got to go back to a Disney park. And I went to another Disney park, Tokyo Disney Sea, which was even better. This is one of the best Disney parks out there. Again, it does feel a little smaller than some of the other ones. I'm not sure if that's entirely the case, but it packs a punch. As you can see here is the volcano. Journey to the Center of the Earth is one of the best dark rides ever, and I got really lucky. We got insanely lucky this day because I got in around opening, big crowds. I was able to get on this ride in like 20 minutes. And then once I left, I saw the queue was up to like 140 minutes. And then the same thing happened with Raging Spirits as well. That was a 20-minute wait, and when we got out, it was a 120-minute wait. So crowds were getting crazy there, but I was able to ride two great rides. I did like Raging Spirits a lot, actually, for what it was. Definitely better than Indiana Jones. And Tokyo Disney Seas, it's just incredible. Again, Journey to the Center of the Earth, one of the best dark rides out there. some really good food. Yeah, this is definitely a park that is worth being on the bucket list. And I didn't have a lot of time that day, so I would really like to go back, and I really want to go back to Japan for a lot of reasons beyond just amusement parks and coasters. But I would love to go back to Tokyo Disney Sea for sure and get to experience some of the things that I didn't get to experience, because this is an awesome park, world class, one of the world's very best parks. Okay, so let's talk about the rides that you've waited this video out for. Let's talk about Hakugei. So shout out to Wikimedia Commons for this image again. I did have some images of it, but they didn't turn out particularly well, so I went on to Wikimedia Commons. I rode this coaster 7 times, and yeah, this is an incredible roller coaster. Um, this is one of the best roller coasters on the planet, and I think if you guys stuck around with me, you might remember that I was a little hesitant, a little skeptical about the renderings of this in the initial POVs. I always said on like TSAC, oh, RMC'd White Cyclone will be one of the best roller coasters ever built. And then we saw the layout and we were kind of like, that's it. They had a lot of potential. And I'm happy to say that this is still one of the best roller coasters in the world. And in fact, this is going to sound crazy. This is my favorite RMC roller coaster. Yes, I know that seems extreme, but I don't think I've experienced an RMC with the airtime strength of this. Even the ones that a lot of people say have like the strongest airtime ever, like Storm Chaser, I didn't feel it like I did on Hakugei, which I was just, oh my gosh, uh, that airtime is nuts. I mean, the craziest parts are the double up and double down, are just some of the strongest airtime you'll ever experience. And then there's a hill before a 0G roll that's just absolutely crazy. This ride also has good laterals, and it's got some good minor pops of airtime in the pre-lift section as well. But yeah, to me, this felt like RMC Sky Rush. Like that's the comparison. It's one of those coasters where you're kind of happy it's over in a way, and not to say that you want it to be over, but it is gonna crush your thighs, but in the best way. You're going to be thrown out of your seat. This thing runs hard. And I saw a lot of posts warning me about this just on Reddit when I was looking at thoughts on this ride before I went on it. I was saying, it's crazy how fast this thing runs. I can't imagine in warmer weather how much the airtime would hurt. But yeah, this airtime hurts, but in the best possible way. This is some of the strongest airtime out there. It really reminded me of my experience on Sky Rush, but except there's, more moments of it, and it's just a long coaster. It feels long when you're on it. And that's something you don't get from a lot of coasters. Not a lot of RMC coasters either. That and Steel Vengeance. But when I look at my rides on Steel Vengeance in 2022, it wasn't as good as I'd remembered. And Hakugei was like a surprise. Like, it was better than I thought it was going to be. And I had super high expectations for it because of what everyone was saying. But I can't remember an RMC just blowing me away like this since Steel Vengeance, really, in 2018. Like, I remember Untamed at Wallaby Holland. I was super excited for it. It was the sole RMC of that Europe trip. And I thought, well, I'm going to experience some good sustained RMC airtime. And I just felt like something was missing. Like, it wasn't good enough. That airtime was not appealing to me enough or something. But this was the opposite. This was my first RMC in a bit of time. And it was so much better than I'd remembered. Again, similar thing with some of the RMCs when I went back in 2022, those were really good experiences as well. I mean, Steel Vengeance wasn't quite living up to the previous memories of it, but this ride was like, wow. It's one of those things that's tough to balance when you're reviewing a coaster, because, if you haven't been on coasters in a while or similar coasters, sometimes you can be swayed one way or the other. It can be disappointing or it can exceed expectations based on your memories. And, yeah, this definitely exceeded expectations. And I think that no matter what, no matter how many RMCs I could ride, if you put them all next to each other, the ones I've ridden at least, I'm not counting like Gwazi or Ari Force 1, but if you put all the ones that I'd ridden and made me ride them all, I think genuinely I could be having the best experience on Hakugei, and that's why it is my number 4 roller coaster ever. Yes, it is in my top 5, moving Steel Vengeance down to 5, which means that, because again, if you remember, Steel Vengeance was 3 on my last list. That must mean that Eejanaika, you can see me here on the right in front of it. That was before I'd ridden it. And then you got the picture on the left. Eejanaika moves into my top 5. Oh yeah, 10 out of 10 for Hakugei, by the way, if you couldn't tell. Yeah, Eejanaika is a near perfect, if not a perfect roller coaster. I think the biggest surprise with this coaster is, despite being more intense the next two, it was so smooth. it was so comfortable, especially if you get an inside seat. It was re-rideable. I got lucky the second day and it wasn't very busy. The first day was busy. Second day it wasn't as busy, and I got like 8 or 9 rides on this thing. It was so smooth and comfortable, yet so forceful and ridiculous. It was brutal yet rideable, and that's something that you don't see too often. You kind of get one or the other, and then you kind of have to decide, where am I going to rank this coaster based on that? Do I want something really rideable? Do I want something really brutal? And that's kind of been the challenge with coming up with a top list, is like, again, like when we talked about Fujiyama versus Steel Dragon earlier, I said, it seems kind of hypocritical for me to like Steel Dragon more. But Eejanaika is weird because it was so rideable. It did not jolt you too much like X2, yet it's flipping you like crazy. And it felt so much more forceful. I love the little surprises of how you're positioned at certain points of the ride. That's really cool. But yeah, that first drop is awesome. Face first towards the ground, and then you get to that big turnaround, and you've got way more flips. It's honestly hard for me to describe everything. It's hard to be analytical about this ride when you don't really know which way's up and which way's down. But what I will say is it feels so forceful and it feels so fast. This ride gives kind of the ultimate sensation of speed. Where X2, it was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm a little disoriented and it's over pretty quick. And you kind of just remember a couple of moments being the real standout. On Eejanaika, I felt the real forces, especially that turnaround, which is, a breather moment on X2. It is not at all that on this coaster as it flips you on that. And you just feel the force. You feel the speed. You feel the intensity. With X2, I was like, the first drop is one of the best moments in the world, and I love that last Raven turn, and that's what makes it a top 10 coaster. But on Eejanaika, everything else was so good. Like, I loved every moment of this ride. It was crazy. It was intense. It was forceful. It was some of the, most forceful feeling elements of any coaster. And also, it really, again, as I said before, you really felt like you were moving ridiculously fast on this thing. That's partially being on the wing and that disorienting feeling of being flipped upside down. But this ride feels fast, and that's something that I really loved about it. So, where does it rank? I think I've settled for number 3. I think G-Force and Voyage just have had that, stood the test of time, have that place in my heart that just, it's hard for anything to surpass. But Eejanaika is really close. It's definitely a top tier roller coaster, 10 out of 10, one of the best rides in the world. And I'm super happy that I got to ride it after, so much time and being worried that I would never get the chance. It really lived up to it. I got to ride it a bunch of times. It was intense, but rideable. It was fun. It was fast. It was freaky. It was photogenic. It was, oh man, this was such a great ride and such a great trip. So thank you guys for watching. I'm hoping to maybe do some rankings videos of other things, like ranking some different coaster types that I've been on sometime this summer. I can't guarantee that, but I really want to find time for that. But in the meantime, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what your thoughts are below, and I will see you guys all later. Bye, everybody.